Much like most kids of the 90s or 2000s, I grew up watching Cartoon Network and Toonami. And one thing I know is that anyone who watches that early era of CN or was channel surfing, you've probably seen something like this.
Piccolo, a man divided, a link between two worlds. His power
This is the Dragon Ball series, a popular manga and anime series, and calling it popular is putting it lightly. If you haven't seen any other anime, you most likely seen a version of Dragon Ball, either the beginning with Dragon Ball, the continuation of the series with Dragon Ball Z, the sequel series Dragon Ball GT, or just seen a dude in the gym with one of these shorts. Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z was and still is a cultural phenomenon that broke through not just cultures but also generations. And I bet if you ask anyone who watched the series growing up, they tried to do a Kamehameha, give their energy for a spirit bomb, or even try to become a Super Saiyan. Hell, during the biggest battles of the other sequel series, Dragon Ball Super, Mexico was acting like it was a real fight. They even had public showings even after the rights holders for the series said not to. There has been countless games, movies, merch, and so much more, given that the manga ran from 1984 to 1995. And even though it ended, we are still seeing how immensely popular the series was. Because of this series, we wouldn't have Naruto, Bleach, or One Piece. Heck, if you aren't a fan of those, there's probably a manga series out there whose creator was probably inspired by the series, if not the series, the creator Akira Toriyama. I could go on and on about everything about the series, and maybe one day I will come back to the series to talk more about it. But I have to admit something. I've never read the manga. I've seen as much of the series across the better part of my 26 years of life, but never sat down to read the manga. It was always in stocks in bookstores, especially the big 3-in ones. It was always something I'd say I'd get to. But with the recent passing of Toriyama-sensei, I thought now would be the best time to do so. And boy, I'm glad that I finally did.
we need to do something, you guys.
Dragon Ball Z will return in a moment.
So a bit of context and history. Like I said before, the Dragon Ball series started back in 1984 in the pages of Weekly Shonen Jump. Written and drawn by Akira Toriyama, the story revolves around a young boy named Goku as he embarks on a journey to find the mystical, magical, risk-granting Dragon Balls. This premise goes a bit buck wild later on, going from a fun martial arts world traveling adventures to, well, that. No matter what, the story revolves around Goku, his friends, and the Dragon Balls. Now, the series spans 519 chapters that are collected in 42 volumes. I don't know if they still do this in Japan with reprints, but here in the States, the 42 volumes are split up across 2 series, Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I don't know if it's cause a good chunk of the US populace grew up watching Z and they needed a way to signify where to start if they wanted to read the portion of the manga they saw on TV, or something else entirely. But starting at Z is like starting Naruto at Naruto Shippuden or One Piece after the 3-day, 2-year time skip. There's 16 volumes or 194 chapters of world building and character development that you are missing out on. And it is a shame that you don't get to see and experience it. And sadly, the only volume 1 that I could get without getting the big, bulky 3-in-1s is Dragon Ball Z. And this is my thoughts and reaction to the manga.
Nobody kills Kakarot while I run.
And now, back to Dragon Ball Z.
So going in, I've seen the beginning of Z a lot of times, thanks to reruns. So I knew what was going to happen. The first volume covers the first 6 episodes of Dragon Ball Z, or if you watch Z Kai, the first 3. And the manga and anime are really almost one-to-one. From Raditz landing on Earth, taking out a farmer as fast as we were introduced to him, flexing on Piccolo, the reintroduction of Goku, Bulma, Master Roshi, and Krillin, and the introduction of Gohan, the son of Goku. Raditz takes Gohan, Goku and Piccolo team up to fight Raditz. They win, but at a cost, and a new threat is introduced. What really surprised me about this is the details that doesn't get translated in the anime. Well, at least the English dub, that is. For instance, both Goku and Piccolo don't speak modern English. For some strange reason, Piccolo speaks more like he's straight out of a Shakespeare play. I guess for the dramatics, cause he was a evil demon king at one point, and Goku, for lack of better terms, talks like a hick. Which makes sense, the guy grew up on the countryside. Then there's Toriyama-sensei's panel work. I've heard how good it was, but never knew how fluid like it was. Like it was so easy to know exactly what was going on and how my eyes almost instinctively moved from one panel to another. It is some of the best panel work I've seen in a long time, and I honestly do believe you should check it out yourself if you have a chance. When I was reading this, I also tried to put myself back to a time where I didn't know what happens in the entirety of the Dragon Ball saga. That way I can imagine how anyone who's new to the series would react. Remember, this would be the 17th volume if they stayed with the Dragon Ball name. It's even referenced in the cover. So people would be dropping in with very little context of the world. So seeing a mysterious man from space going toe-to-toe with a strange-looking demon and straight up leaving is probably just as confusing as knowing that Piccolo was the big bad at the end of Dragon Ball and seeing this mysterious man not even flinch at his attack and then leaving. Then we have things like on the island with Goku in the game. We have them catching up because again, they probably haven't seen each other in like 5 years. Then Raditz shows up, explains his and Goku's backstory, while Master Roshi explains Goku's time on Earth. Which is a lot of information to cover, and was a genuine twist to readers of Dragon Ball back in the day when they found out that Goku comes from a race of space monkeys and has a long-lost brother. But to anyone who's new to the series, this might be a bit too much. And this isn't a slight against Toriyama-sensei. He could have predicted that people would jump in the middle of the story. Speaking of Toriyama, I think these are some of the best cliffhangers I've seen in manga ever. So Raditz styles on Piccolo, dips, ends of chapter. Goku meets up with friends, Raditz shows up, knocks out Krillin, turns out that Raditz also has a tail just like Goku did as a kid. End of that chapter. The end of the 3rd chapter ends with Raditz one-shotting Goku, telling him to meet him in a day and taking Gohan. Man, just imagining the hype these 3 chapters alone would have generated would have been next level. Speaking of endings, at the time this was published for the first time, there was 2 ways of reading the manga officially. Week to week with individual chapters, or when they collect the chapters into manga volume. Now, I'm pointing this out mostly because the end of chapter 10, which is also the end of the entire volume, is Goku dying and Raditz saying, "You think I'm bad? Wait until you meet the next guys." Like, imagine only being able to read the manga through the volumes that are released months apart, not knowing what is in store for the Z Fighters. And honestly, that would have been a great way to read these chapters and experience these stories. And I'll be honest with you, throughout the entire process of making this video, I have been kicking myself. Kicking myself that it took me this long to actually read this series. And kicking myself for not trying to start from the very start and picking up Volume 1 of Dragon Ball and not Z. And kicking myself for not truly experiencing how great Akira Toriyama is as an author. I spent my entire life as a fan of anime and manga, and learning everything through experiences of the early stages of anime in the States and videos about the stuff that I enjoy that I never really had the chance to fully appreciate the work firsthand for a lot of stuff. And it took the death of a creator of one of the most influential series that got me into this fandom to realize this. I do recommend experiencing Dragon Ball for yourself, be it anime or manga. And if I were to come back and make a video series about my experience reading everything Dragon Ball, I am going to start from the beginning. That is, if there's a want for that. And if I learned anything about my experience, is that there's one thing to hear about how great something is, but there's another to experience it on your own. And honestly, I think as long as you experience the Dragon Ball series in some way, or any of his other work, Akira Toriyama-sensei would be happy. So thank you, Toriyama-sensei, for everything.